You are.
Beautiful. I'd like to call to order the April 19th, 2023 Little Compton School Committee meeting. We all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we could bow our heads, open our hearts for a moment of reflection. Thank you all. And I will consider a motion to enter executive session under RIGL section 42-6-5A1 via roll call.
So moved.
Second.
Travis Audi,
Aye.
Hannah Ayat,
Aye.
Megan Gonzalez,
Aye.
Susan Kinane,
Aye.
Mike Rocha.
Aye. My insides are still going.
Right. I would like to welcome everyone back from executive session. There were no votes taken in executive session, and I will consider a vote to seal the minutes of executive session.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Executive minutes are sealed. Consent agenda.
I move for approval of the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor by vote of roll call to approve the consent agenda?
Travis Audi,
Aye.
Hannah Ayat,
Aye.
Megan Gonzalez,
Aye.
Susan Canane,
Aye.
Mike Rocha.
Aye. Excellent. Moving right along to our spotlight, the end of year activities at Wilbur McMahon School. Principal McKinnon, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Beautiful. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm just waiting for John to get some up there. All right, so anyways, before we go to our end of the year activities, a couple of spotlight things. These are a couple of our eighth graders who recently participated in the Rhode Island Science and Engineering Fair at CCRI. Had a lot of success. Initially, I think we had it down that two of them were considered first grant juniors. There are actually three of them, so they finished in the top 25% of about 200 participants, if I have my numbers correct, with the Science and Engineering Fair. And those were Deidre Tolson, Margaret Burnett, and Dio Waite. And we had two other students who were third grant juniors, Phoebe Hadley and Sarah Higgins. They did a tremendous job, and a shout out to Miss Brazil, our eighth grade science teacher, who really gets them going this time of the year as seventh graders. And they start to talk about what they might be doing for their eighth grade science fair project. But they certainly do a great job. The next slide, one of our participants who did not participate in the Science and Engineering Fair because she made the decision to go to the Rhode Island State Scripps Spelling Bee on the same day. That was Marjorie Leary. She finished sixth in the state at the Scripps Spelling Bee up at Lincoln High School on March 18th. She and I had a laugh the following Monday. The word that caught her, I thought for sure when they said the word, I thought she was going to knock it out of the park, and she missed with one letter. It wasn't, I don't think it was the toughest word she had that day. But anyway, it was a great showing for Wilbur McMahon School and certainly for Marjorie and her family.
What was the word?
Yeah, what was the word?
Was it cayenne? Cayenne pepper?
Oh, yeah.
And that was a word 9 times out of 10, she's going to knock it out of the park, and it just caught her. I think it was, she might have used an A at the end, cayenne, instead of an E, something along those lines. Next slide. As you're well aware, at the end of March, early April, we had Shrek the Musical Junior that took place in our Wilbur McMahon Gymnatorium. Miss Oriole was our director. Mr. Kirby was basically our stage director, and Miss Sagala, our kindergarten teacher, was the choreographer. Kids did an outstanding job. Never easy, as we talk to the eighth graders right now, never easy getting up in front of their peers or in front of their family and performing, but it was a sight to be seen. The costumes, the singing, the dancing was truly great, and it was fun to watch. Doesn't end for our band and chorus director. We have a talent show coming up in about 3 weeks. I believe it's May 11th. It's a Thursday. They'll be starting the auditions for that and the practices for that over the next couple of weeks. They also have their spring concert. I believe it's the first week of June. I'll have more information about that. That'll be coming up as well. So it's certainly a busy end of the year for our band and chorus. And the final thing we'll talk a little bit about, just a couple of things school-wise. We are currently we just finished our ELA RICAS, which is the state assessment for our grades 3 through 8 in English language arts. We finished that right before the vacation. We jumped on the first 2 weeks of it with our grades 3, 4, 5, and then the following week with grades 6, 7, 8. One of the things that we pushed out to them early on, kind of as an incentive, was, we're looking for perfect attendance, because there's nothing worse as a school administrator and staff here trying to make up for students who weren't here and trying to get them on board. The kids were outstanding. We had perfect attendance during those testing, which was great. Our math RICAS comes up first week of May. NGSS, which is Next Generation Science Standards for grades 5 and 8, take place on May 9th and 10th. Those are 2 one-hour exams that they'll take. Our 8th grade is preparing for Washington, DC. It is coming in less than a month. They'll be heading down to DC for the first time in, I believe, 3 years. Mr. DeLeo and Miss Miller are our 2 8th grade advisors. They'll be traveling with the group with some parents and with one other teacher who is also a parent, heading down to DC. Unfortunately, they will be going to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, but they did not get the opportunity. They won't have the opportunity to lay a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which has always been an opportunity for us. We just weren't lucky enough to be one of the finalists in it. But hopefully in future years, we'll be able to do that. School attendance, always important. Our numbers, as Dr. Mitchell and I have talked about, going back a month or so ago, when I say high, we're in the 20s. We should be much better than that, the bottom line. But they are starting to come down. Reason being, obviously, as the school year goes along and, the weather gets nicer and the kids are able to get outside and spread out, it becomes a little bit better. I'd love to see that 17% chronics, to under 15 by the end of the year. We'll see about that. As you can see, probably up on some of the TV screens that are around the building, our 8th graders are preparing for their community project, which is the service learning portion of the International Baccalaureate. Every 8th grader is responsible for some sort of community service project. Some of those projects are garden related. I'll give an example. The front of our building where the fire hydrant, a little bit of an eyesore as you come in. We have some 8th graders who are going to be doing some work around there with planting some perennials, things to help block the fire hydrant. I did check with the fire chief. He said it was fine as long as they have access to it. We have some recycling things going on with our 8th graders. We have 8th graders who are currently working with the community center, with some of our senior citizens, with technology, with cell phones. It's coming along very well. I also believe as the years go along with this, it'll get better and better. Right now, there's going to be some bumps in the road as we expect being the first year doing it, but I think it'll be a great program for our school, for the 8th graders with the community projects. That is it. Are there any questions at all?
Great stuff, Principal McKinnon. Thank you as always.
I do have one. Are they also, we're doing the raised beds?
We're doing
the Oasis?
The Oasis. They're going to work on doing some of the pruning, I guess you could say, on the Oasis without, mechanical tools. But they also building raised beds there. They're also building raised beds for the community center as well. We have one boy who is also doing a kind of a park bench. I'm not sure where. I think it's going to be going out on the pathway somewhere. Again, those are probably touched on 5 or 6 there. We have a limp sync program that's going to be taking place next Tuesday with one of our 8th graders. There's a ton of programs, and I'll try, in our next meeting in May, I'll have some pictures because we haven't started with any of them. They actually start this Friday with a group of 3 boys doing a recycling of old athletic equipment to be donated to the Salvation Army for their thrift stores.
Nice.
Lacrosse, anything you have,
Yeah.
clean out your houses.
I might take you up on that. I do have some items possibly.
Me too.
Principal McKinnon, thank you so much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Superintendent.
Okay, well, I'm happy.
Thank you, Lori.
No problem. Mark Dufresne, our special education transition consultant, is not here tonight. Neither is Mr. McNamee, so sort of fill in some blanks there. I'm happy to report that regarding our transition away from a regional collaborative that existed for 45 years or so, we are ahead of schedule and under budget, barely, but we are under budget. So we are in throes of hiring a part-time special education director, and Mr. Dufresne is one of our applicants. Full disclosure. We are also in the process of hiring a part-time special education data management assistant. The region handled a lot of our data management around our students with special needs and all the compliance reports and census and Medicaid billing and CompuClaim and all that behind the curtain stuff that keeps schools running and wonderful programs moving forward. So we have a really good kind of wide and deep applicant pool for that particular position. Mr. Dufresne and I met with Anne Marie McAndrew. She's the integrated preschool director for the entire region. So she has at least half a dozen integrated preschools that she has overseen for the past 2 decades. And she handed us a binder this thick. And we are dividing and conquering, but there's a lot, and there's outreach to Little Peeps and other daycare and early childhood education providers throughout the region that we will now take over those pieces of her position, and she's going to be missed absolutely. But Mr. Dufresne is coming up with a wonderful transition plan. He spent Monday in our co-taught classrooms, and he was very impressed and reported to me. And so he's really getting a great overview of just how Wilbur McMahon manages our specialized instruction, and how many of our classrooms you would walk by and not really know who the teacher of record was in that classroom, because our co-teachers, our case managers are rolling up their sleeves and doing a lot of instruction as well. We've invited some stakeholders. We had a little reception a few weeks ago to serve on a new body. We have a lot of committees in schools, and this will be the Little Compton School Department C group, once again, SEA, but it is Special Education Advisory Group. The region has had one for years, a regional advisory group of parents, stakeholders, community members, educators. And so we have 2 stakeholders, 2 parents, 2 moms that are willing to step up, and for the first time ever, this brand new department sort of lead our new C group. And so that's Special Education Advisory Group. The last day of the region is June 30th, 2023. So we are ahead of schedule. And budgetarily, we are under. So that is always good. But it has been a very steep learning curve. Regarding all the reading at RIDE that we've had to do, because all of this was ceded in the past to another entity.
Correct.
So it's different from sitting on the board, which I've sat on for 5 years. But we have a wonderful consultant, and he has been just all in, and comes with an incredible skill set and decades of experience. So that's where we are right now. We have, it's all good news.
Excellent.
Yep.
Any questions for Superintendent Diaz?
Thank you.
Excellent. Item 7, finance report. Mr. McNamee isn't here. Are you going to wear this hat tonight?
I have to wing it, right? Let's see,
I hope he's feeling better.
and he's very rarely out. It's just tis the season, right? So let's see. The only word I really care about is the word surplus. So when I say, we're at 146, and that 146,000 surplus for FY 2023. And that's before he and I sit down and reconcile a lot of accounts that, we charge to our federal grants. So that might
Well,
that might grow. Fingers crossed. And so speaks for itself. It's a small district, but big numbers. He did want to bring up, he asked me to add this agenda item, update to the FY 2024 budget. He just wanted, the leeway to possibly share some information. And that information is the budget committee that he and I presented to a few weeks ago. And, we had a wonderful evening at the Brownell House. I'm sure everyone here has been there, but it's a quaint place and it just was a nice, comfortable spot to discuss a lot of money. And we did get some feedback a week later that the budget committee might consider level funding the schools. And that would be difficult for us to reconcile, because we're already reconciling an $80,000 cut because of the wealth tax, basically, in our state aid.
Mhm.
And we are developing a brand spanking new, highly impactful department for the first time in the history of the town. So that would not bode well for us if we are level funded. And we feel the budget we delivered was, a little over 2%.
2.32% voted on and approved by this committee unanimously.
Took a lot. And so we're hoping that, it doesn't go that way, but we wanted that agenda item so that he could talk about that update.
Perfect. Any,
Fully transparent. So.
okay. I don't want to put you on the spot, but any questions for superintendent / finance director this evening, DS?
Maybe you can answer a question. The housing aid that we receive,
Mhm.
we get like reimbursement for.
Right.
How does that, what's the process for us to get that? Where do we come in on this?
It is one of the functions that is handled by John McNamee pretty much exclusively. And when it comes to capital projects, the firm that we hired went out to bid that $50,000 grant. And so they've already opened up the dashboard at RIDE. And we are also eligible for sort of pay-go money as well. And as you know, we did get a one-time drop from the region
Mhm.
because of the dissolution. Much was our Medicaid reimbursements that we let roll for the past 3-4 years. So it could be anywhere from 35%, Mike, to sometimes 50%. It depends on what sort of incentives they have. Safety, sometimes they have extra funds for anything related to safety, anything related to green energy, that sort of thing. So
And I don't want to get too far off this agenda because I know Sean will have a fit. But
we will.
I'll use the grant that we get for the media center here, where we all had to sign for the money that we received.
Yes.
Is that any part of that process of the housing aid? Do we have to sign off on any of that grant?
That's more of an entitlement that was $25,000. So we did have a designer come in and look at our library and also look at one of our classrooms. It's going to be a STEM classroom. So they're two separate projects, but some of that 25,000 may go here, but much of it will go to our new design STEM lab. And next year, the bulk of, and I'll send that this Friday night in the memo. The bulk of next year will be reimagining this space. These clunky tables and so forth, reimagining the media center. If you remember, 2023, 2024, that's
Correct.
the capital improvement plan there.
Correct.
So we will be reimbursed a minimum of 35%, a maximum of 50 and sometimes more, depending on the project. And when you fold projects together,
They incentivize, they do.
they
do
absolutely
some
do.
creative things in terms of getting people to participate. Oh, why do we need to
Right.
update this? It's like, well, there's a 50% incentive if this safety mechanism is implemented at your,
Right.
and whatever the other ramifications could be that go with that cost savings.
So FY 2024, we're still on that budget item. Charlie Clough. The gymnatorium upgrade is part of all of that. The reimagining of the media center, the STEM lab is that $25,000 grant that we didn't even really have to do anything for. Every district got some sort of aid in that respect. And the parking lot, that is a joint venture between the town and the school. They will be ceding care and control of that particular land to the school. And so the town will enjoy 35 to 50% reimbursement on that.
Correct.
And I think they approved one of the designs a few weeks ago at town council.
Excellent. Excellent.
So I have a question on that, but I'll ask later on the agenda, so we
Okay,
don't
sure.
get my hands swept.
Excellent. No other questions. We'll move down to committee reports. Policy Subcommittee report. Ms. Hannah.
Thank you. We met on March 29th. We had a very productive meeting. We have a lot that's going to be coming through the next few months. I plan to call another meeting before our May regular committee meeting. So I'll have more to update then. And I can get more specific when we get down to action items.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, I believe the next item agenda is Portsmouth School Committee Commission Liaison. That is me. All right, so we talked a little bit off the record, but to bring everyone up to speed, the town of Portsmouth has named their new principal, Dr. Jeffrey Heap. He comes to us from Middletown High School. He is a past assistant principal at East Greenwich. He's been an educator in Tiverton. He's worked with Superintendent Diaz. He is very well respected, and the vibe in the room was everybody was very pleased, both the public and then also the committee as a whole, as well as the administrator. So he starts July 1st, and away we go. And everybody believes that this is the right hire. So that is one major action point. Another action point. I always looked forward to this possibility when I was a child, but it never came to fruition. This summer, they will be putting AC into Portsmouth High School. I don't know the validity of the project in terms of how much the scope is. However, that is something that is coming for our students. And then the final piece that I wanted to speak on is, we do live in a district that is fortunate and has the means in terms of a lot of criteria being met. But one thing that oftentimes doesn't get highlighted is the students that could possibly miss graduating. And the Portsmouth High School does an unbelievable job in terms of credit recovery. There's approximately 3.6% of students. So while it's a small percentage, it is students that, whether it's absenteeism, issues at home, not coming to class regularly, not performing well, this gives them an avenue to redeem themselves. So an example they used is student does great semester 1 and 2. Something maybe happens at home where semester 3 is not so great, 4 is a problem. they get with them before the end of the school year and they offer them resources so that they can graduate on time the following year, these types of things. And it seems as though they do have a good pulse on the students that have that need and they reach out to them accordingly. So I thought that that was a great program, something to highlight. And then other than that, they do post their meetings online. They're very thorough. Their website's quite easy to navigate, both the minutes, the agenda, and then the YouTube. So if parents are interested, their meetings are great. There was no high school liaison update at the previous meeting, at the past meeting. Moving right along to Ms. Sue Kinane for the wellness report.
Well, we met on the 16th of March. Mostly we talked a lot about the food service program. And we met the same day that the state was having their conversation and about students and lunches being free, meals being free at school, and the importance of all of that across the state. Did you want to say anything else about that?
It's not, yes, sure. It looks hopeful, it looks like it could happen. There seems to be political will this year when there wasn't last year. And I think Massachusetts flipping the switch for this 1 year only definitely sort of triggered what's going on in Rhode Island. And so hopefully I did participate in a panel for the Rhode Island Food Council. And so it does seem like it may happen. Cross our fingers. It is one of the things we had to pull out of the budget because of the state aid cut.
Correct.
But it's a well fed,
They do better.
rested, they're energized, and they're engaged.
Perfect.
Fingers crossed. Call everyone you can. I know Megan has filled out surveys, so have I, and they're lobbying and hard.
Awesome. Anything else to report?
I think of what else that day.
They love that step challenge. Yeah, that's all good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Fine. Mr. Mike Rocha with the Town Recreation Committee report.
The committee met on March 20th. One of the things that was a concern of mine when I joined that committee was that all the different fields that get used, the different events, which includes gymnasium here after school hours, Veterans Field, Veterans Parking Lot, the soccer field, tennis courts / football area. There was no area that people could point to say what's going on where at what time. So I came up with the idea. I said we should have a calendar that encompasses all of the areas, so that if somebody wanted to use Veterans Field and on a certain date, they can go to this calendar to see if it's actually available or not available. So I got charged with putting that together by the rec committee. So I reached out to the town. So currently there is, if you go to the town website, there's actually a recreation tab for a recreation committee that you can actually click on that. And it brings up a calendar that you can click on any particular day. And it tells you if something's being used or not, and where it is and what times it's being used.
Well done, Michael.
Excellent.
I reached out to John as far as trying to sync in your calendar from the gym after hours. I told John that I'm not worried about during the school day because it doesn't have anything to do with rec. My concern was that I used the play as an example. If you guys needed the gymnasium for the play, and it was set up and it wasn't going to be available to any outdoor, group that wanted to use it. We don't know when it's being used or not used because there's no communication. So if you guys could control that inside your calendar, we don't want to control. We just want it to sync to our calendar so that if it's the calendar's busy, if the gymnasium's busy, just block off that it's busy. And so that when people come for requests to the rec committee, that we know that, and it's, I guess, more towards the winter months, right, for the gymnasium. But that's one of the things, and the other thing we're working on, and I'll be presenting that at our next meeting, which will be April 24th at 6:30. It's gonna be at the community center. Is whether we're gonna actually put up for our own website for the recreation committee. So again, everybody's got their own different thing going on, but how do you navigate to those different committees? How do you reach out to those different committees? So that's the other project that I'm working on. So I'm working on the calendar as well as the website portion of it so that people can.
One-stop shop, find it all. Yeah.
And they'll know that, hey, you want something from the rec committee? This is where to go.
Bingo.
The only other thing that they're working on is building a sign. I believe it's gonna be for the soccer field, the new old soccer field that's been there for a little while. And there was discussion about the bench that Mr. McKinnon spoke about. So that would be coming up at our next meeting as well.
Awesome. Michael, great stuff. Great stuff. Right, we have reached item 9, public input. Sellout crowd tonight. Mr. Roger Lord, go ahead. Why don't you start us right off?
I was wondering if you've given any more thought or will be giving any more thought to a school resource officer in view of the school shooting down in Nashville. Watched all of the videos. I mean, that kid shot right through the door. So a door is not impenetrable, even if it's locked, they can still get in. So you don't need an answer now, but it's something to think about.
Possibly an agenda item. Are there any other public comments? All right. Let's move down to action items. 10.1. First read of the anti-hazing policy. Ms. Hannah, go right ahead.
Yes, so the anti-hazing policy, we just were taking that out of other existing policies to make it its own standalone policy. You can see that we have the definitions, obviously, what's considered hazing, what's not considered hazing, where it happens, how those involved, established protocol, et cetera. So just kind of taking what we already had and making it its own individual policy, as opposed to it was kind of muddled in with other ones. And that's just, first read. So we'll vote on that next month.
We didn't have a hazing policy, huh?
It was, I'm not sure what exactly it was in, but it was in, most of the language was in another, like
Should.
anti-bullying and things like that. But hazing is its own separate
Correct.
thing. So we're making our own separate policy.
Yes. Any questions?
I do.
Go ahead, Michael.
So this refers to, for purposes of this policy, hazing means, and it refers to whether on public or private property. I mean, how much say do we really have on private property?
I got you covered on this one. Let's say there's a soccer team and the hazing mechanism is they shave all the freshmen's heads or all the new kids' heads, and they do it at someone's house. They would still be held responsible for the hazing policy when they showed up to school on Monday, despite it taking place at a private entity. That's kind of where the guise is. It's not like we're going to be going in and governing, but that's kind of where that would happen.
Yeah, I believe because it would be happening within the name of the school and for purposes of they're organized. It's a group of students organized based on whether it's a sport or a club, and they're doing some sort of, initiation in the name of that organization, which falls under our
Or online, virtually.
online,
Or virtually, you're right. I mean, nowadays.
Which a lot of hazing definitely happens off
Mhm.
campus. I
Right.
think most parents.
Would you say,
def-
Megan? I can't hear
I
you.
said most hazing happens off campus, so I think that most families would want their children protected in that case. So I think that's important to leave in there.
If you look at page 2 of the hazing policy, where it says hazing is prohibited, if you move down beyond that to hazing is also prohibited at a location, activity, function, or program that is not school related if the act or acts in question, and then it bullets out what's required. So even though it did not occur on school property, it creates a hostile environment at school for the target, infringes on the rights of the target at school, materially and substantially disrupts the educational process or the orderly operation of school, or is intended to be or related to any conduct or method of initiation to any student organization. Again, there's that language, whether on public or private property, which willfully or recklessly endangers the physical or mental health of any student or other person. So that's how it kind of gets caught in to the, for lack of a better term, the jurisdiction of the school.
I understand what you're saying is that it affects back at school, but what grounds do we have to stand on that happens on somebody's private house? There's an incident between 10 kids or 2 kids at somebody's house. So when does it become a police matter versus something that the school comes and?
Oh, well, it certainly
Could be.
could be a
Yeah,
police.
it could escalate to
But
that.
we're saying if this happened because you had all the soccer team boys over the house and the parents go away, and all of a sudden this initiation ritual occurs, then Monday back at school, it's reported to a teacher that so-and-so did this to me, this occurred. We then, under this policy, can still enforce it. We're not going to go banging on somebody's door to say, oh, what was going on? Let's investigate someone's downstairs basement that wasn't adequately supervised by parents. Same, no different than if we investigate a bullying incident that occurs on social media.
Right. Anything that could disrupt the educational environment the subsequent day or week or does fall into the school's purview.
It feels like you're overstepping. I mean, to me, it does. That this happens in someone's house, the parents are responsible.
I
Like
mean, then it
that's,
becomes a police issue.
Right.
As somebody that's been hazed multiple times and people, I know that it can escalate to legal ramifications.
Yes.
I would definitely err on the side of caution of doing anything that's related to an organization within our 4 walls, off grounds, to have a child come in and say, this is what happened to me in the name of whatever, the sports,
Music, it could be anything.
music, drama, science, whatever is going on. We have that responsibility to protect that child.
have you had that happen at school before? In this school?
Definitely high school.
High school level,
High
yes,
school.
more often.
Very, very,
Okay, but all right. And so this policy goes to the high school too?
No.
No,
They would have a
we're
separate.
talking
I bet
about.
they already have yeah, they
Right,
must
so
have. a
we're
hazing
talking,
policy.
but this policy is talking about this.
Correct.
And
Right.
this is just though in
just in
this is in case something happens, because hopefully, we hope an incident like this never
Right.
happens, but if it does, because we have this policy in place, we as a school district are protected and we have our own procedure that we follow in terms of investigating. I mean, if it wasn't written in like that and our soccer team hazed another student and we weren't able to help or protect them, that's where it would come in. But these are all hypotheticals, but that's why we have policies in place, is so that in the event that this does ever happen, we have the steps to take.
Right, but for me, I feel,
Go ahead.
sorry.
No, don't be sorry. This is
Okay,
what we're
so
talking- we're
here's,
talking.
I'm just coming at this from, these are not your children. You know, I get what you're saying, but you're like, this sounds like you don't trust parents to be responsible. And so if you're concerned about Joe Schmo really hasn't raised his kid well, and so that kid,
We're
no,
not
wait a
saying
minute,
anything
I'm
about
just
that.
trying to, I know you're not saying it, I'm just saying, for me, hearing this, my brain goes to, if that is a fear and a concern, and you have a soccer team, that's where the coach and the school, if you feel like, Jack, that's where you sit down and you say, hey, this is the way we're going to conduct ourselves. We are wonderfully made, we're great people, and we have very high standards, and we have zero tolerance, but you do it with the parents, and the parents are involved. And then where's that responsibility? But when you, my insides are going,
I understand, and
I feel like
this isn't meant to do that at all. This is just the legal language around it. And this is to essentially, and to put forth that, feeling, as you were saying, like, this is to codify that, because we can't, our job as school committee is to do the policies. Like, they can't do any of that without having our guide set first. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is our policy saying we're zero tolerance against hazing. So now that once it's passed, we're not even voting tonight on if this is passed, so we can still talk about this, and we can send it back to the subcommittee to discuss as well. But this is to essentially, when it's in place, to say, yes, this district has zero tolerance hazing policy. This is what backs that.
right.
up.
I'm just talking about private property, like someone's home. That's all.
Yeah.
I just think,
We have to draw a line. We have to draw a line, and what do we say?
You guys got to both Google hazing incidents that have gone bad, because
I think
there are
there's
people
precedent
think that
here.
because it happens off campus that they're safe, and then it actually becomes a legal matter because it's endangering this. So
That goes back to my question about when does it become a police matter? So we as a school can't be the police of people at home as well as at school. So
But we have
we're not saying that.
we have our dual responsibility to make sure that when students come into this building, they feel safe. And if an event happened outside of school where everybody involved was coming together because of the school, the group of children is convened because they're all in a group together.
correct. Parents
They were
typically
either
aren't
at a
involved.
sport, like, it's typically, this isn't just happening at a kid's sleepover party. Like, this is something that's happened because everybody's at Newport Creamery after the drama club or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, this isn't in any type of way like we're going into people's home. If it came into an instance where there were some sort of investigation, we would have, the police would be involved, but
right, but at the same time, like you're saying, go online and look at what hazing is and what has happened. I think if you don't make policy based on us and where we are here in town and who the people are here in town, instead of like that comment, and I love you dearly, that comment sounds like, to me, like the sky is falling, we gotta go.
We have a
Tell
bullying
the king.
policy. Do we have a bullying issue?
Mr. McKinn gives reports from time to time on that.
Correct, but do we have a glaring bullying issue? The policies that we put in place are to protect the children, the stakeholders, and the educational outcomes. Having a no hazing policy makes it very clear to any student leaders that oversee organizations within the school that are disconnected from both parents and administrators that there is a no nonsense taking on the young kids, putting them through some sort of hazing initiative where whatever it is, it just nips it in the bud so that, boom, there's no hazing here. And if there is, here's the consequences.
I don't think that's
I have
the
a question for
No, but
Sean.
I'm
Nobody's
talking
disagreeing
about,
with you on that.
yeah, no, I'm talking about
So then-
someone's home. Like, that's my
It,
thing.
it doesn't go to a home unless it warrants, like, as administrators, if somebody has their head shaved, it's a lot different than if somebody misses a couple days of school and then he comes back in and says, yeah, they beat the heck out of me because I'm the new kid on the hockey team. Then as administrators, they have to step in and say, whoa, what happened now? Now it becomes a legal matter. We're not going to this. We reach out to the appropriate authorities to take that on.
Right. So let me just add to this conversation from a legal perspective. Two things. One, the reason we have policy, particularly when it applies to discipline, is under the law, you have a requirement of notice, meaning that everyone has a fair chance to be put on notice that these are the rules. If you violate the rules, you can be disciplined. if you were to not have, and I'm not suggesting anyone here saying we don't have a hazing policy, but if we weren't to have this policy and hazing were to occur and the school department were then to discipline someone for hazing another student, that student could challenge that discipline, go to the Rhode Island Department of Ed. Say, I didn't have proper notice because they never passed a policy. Okay, so that's one reason why you would have a policy that is proactive, even if it's not something that is necessarily occurring in large numbers at this particular school. Doesn't seem to me, particularly with the age group that you predominantly deal with,
Correct.
would be a significant issue. But on the off chance, particularly in your middle school grades, it probably is more likely that something like that may happen. So that's one, why you would have the policy. Two, the issue of the concept that you're disciplining a student for something that occurred off school property. What the policy is trying to do is, let's go with the shaved head example. Kids after school at a friend's house, this hazing incident occurs, shaved head, comes in on Monday, is starting to be ridiculed by the other kids because he looks funny because his head's shaved. Of course, the kids that are ridiculing someone for a shaved head in school, on school time, on school property, we can discipline them under a particular bullying or other policy. However, we also want to be proactive about that hazing and the hazing that occurred under the guise of, you are a part of this team, you are a part of this group, this is our initiation ceremony, and we want to be able to stop that before it occurs. And sometimes these hazing incidents occur off school grounds. And that's why that's in place, because eventually it's going to come back to the school because it's associated with the school. It's hazing is defined as part of an initiation of a particular program. With the shaving of the head example, could police be involved if this happened? Maybe. But you're dealing with young kids, you're dealing with consent issues. Did the kid actually consent to get his hair shaved because he really wanted to be a part of the team and be accepted? Those sorts of things that make a criminal issue much more ambiguous. But we still need, as a school department, under the law, to be able to make sure that these incidences are not impacting the school day. And sometimes that means disciplining someone for something that occurred off school grounds, but there needs to be that connection. Does it impact the school day? And often with hazing, it will.
Yeah, if I may, I mean, it is, I think, and I get where you're coming from, Sue and Mike, but it does create a hostile environment at school for the target. And I think that is, as an administrator, that's what I've seen in schools for 40 years. It creates a hostile environment on campus for that victim. Whatever happened off campus, it could be a sleepover, whatever, and every year we hear of kids dying in hazing incidents in school, high school, but a lot of times in college. Every year we open up our newspaper online or in print and have to read about an athlete somewhere in the States dying from a hazing. But so I get it, so I've been an administrator who's had to discipline kids for things that happened off campus because they did disrupt the school day and the educational flow of things, especially for the student who was the victim.
Correct.
And that student's peer group and that student's class. I wish we didn't have to have such a long arm, It does impact school a lot of times. Definitely bullying off campus or online does impact a child's experience in school. The child feels and the child doesn't feel safe. Hazing at Wilbur McMahon, I don't know.
It's more of a high school issue, but it could happen.
College.
Very easily happen.
But we have a lot of sports here and our kids.
Correct. That's the only reason why I think we should have the policies. We do have sports teams within the school. While I agree with Sue, our kids are great, but this just takes, somebody once told me, locks keep honest people honest. It's like nothing gets stolen if it's locked.
Mhm.
Honest, it's the same thing. This policy just puts in place that the kids will know
Yeah.
that this is off limits.
Yeah.
And there's no, hey, we don't have a policy at our school.
Yeah.
Not that they're doing that,
Mhm.
but it just nips it in the bud that if it's out there and, protects us.
So that's right. The community does reflect the school. So the school does not have a lot of bullying incidents at all. There's not a lot of discipline issues.
Yeah, no.
There are days when he's busy and he has me on speed time. But it's rare, but they do happen sort of, but we've worked elsewhere and this school is a safe place. There aren't a lot of bullying incidents and I haven't heard of one hazing at all. And it does reflect the community.
But at the high school level, again, it happens. And, I'll use Portsmouth High School for an example. When you go to their opening athletic nights where the athletic director speaks, they talk about hazing and that it is not allowed in any way, shape or form.
Everywhere, unfortunately.
It's probably not something we touch on here as coaches because it's never happened, but it's probably something they do need to touch on. I think the kids would look at them, initially like, what is that? But at the high school level, it is definitely prevalent.
I don't think there's we don't disagree about having a hazing policy. I think it's the overreach of going and making judgment in somebody's private home.
Yeah.
That's the sticking point. I think is the sticking point on this is because at that point, it's hearsay that it didn't happen within the school. It didn't happen within our staff or anything to actually witness anything. We don't know exactly what goes on. So I guess the concern is that you want to, by this policy, if I understand this, is that create a punishment for something that did not happen within the school at somebody's house that it's party at that time. We don't know exactly.
In the name of a program from the school,
Not necessarily, though.
then it's not hazing.
It's a corruption of a school-based program.
If I may,
Go ahead.
we have this word for word in our existing bullying policy.
Yes.
This same piece of language here about where and when and how it applies. But it does already exist in a policy here at the school.
This goes a little bit more in depth. It also links.
That
to
doesn't mean it's
statutes,
right. I'm just talking about someone's private home. That's all I'm talking. I understand what you guys are saying, but I'm just telling you.
Let's hope we never have to actuate it. How's that?
Excuse me?
Let's hope we never have to actuate any sort of protocols. If this is.
Right, but I think it's flirting with what's the next thing going to be and putting it about private, someone's private home or whatever. I mean, what if you're the kid who got your head shaved and it was all fun and games at the moment? And and then you show up and you have buyer's remorse and it's like, oh, we did it to me,
That's how these policies get implemented. I mean, my high
I'm
school, we
just
used to
talking
shave the
about-
freshmen heads all the time.
Right.
And my senior year, a parent called the police and no charges were pressed, but they didn't know that their son, who was a freshman, was going to come home with a ridiculous haircut. And then a week later, he'd shave it off. But his mom called the police and that implemented the hazing policy. And now no one was hurt, and it was simple because we were like, what's the big deal? It's just shaving heads. Somebody took it to a degree where it was a big deal.
Right.
And then it goes to that point. But that incident didn't happen at the school.
Right.
And it happened. I mean, I got my head shaved with parents there. I mean, it's a different time. But I'll also say, I did it because you feel this pressure to fit in with the older guys and gals. You want to be welcomed into the group. They all did it. That's the hardest thing when somebody says, I went through this too. And you're going to be, and it's like, I don't want to do this, but they did it. And I just want to be accepted by the group. And when you're under 25 and your frontal lobe is still developing, being accepted by the group is one of the most important things. And your judgment is skewed when you're in that moment of, do I do this or do I not? And a lot of kids fall victim to it. The remorse, like you said, afterwards, the getting picked on, getting tormented, or being the one that says, I don't want to do it. And then you're ostracized from the team. This eliminates all of that. There's no question. There's no like, is the football team doing, is the hockey team, is the cross-country team doing that? No, because we have this policy.
Also, Mrs. Canane, there would always be an investigation to make sure that the allegations
Correct.
are true. No one's going to be penalized or get in trouble under this policy until a thorough investigation that would involve families and students and large conversations before any of this was acted upon.
No administrators knocking on a parent's door.
I know.
saying,
I'm
"Hey,
just
you
telling
had
you.
an event here."
I just feel like when you talk about private property,
It's just, I
you've just
think,
overstepped the line. That's all.
just for the purposes of defining what hazing is and making it separate from bullying. And again, the impetus is really that outside act has now created a toxic environment in this building and on the school bus or during the soccer game or whatever it is. And that's what we have to make sure isn't happening, is that toxic environment, because our students do, I think, feel safe here and they should
Correct.
continue to feel safe here. So that is the purpose behind the policy. But I'm happy to take suggestions. We can
First
have
read.
Sean, this is only the first read. We can have Sean look into just the legality of that language a little more and discuss it again next month for the second read.
Good. All right.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Good conversation, good dialogue. No wrong answers here. Great to have the ideas present.
Absolutely.
Item 10.2, consider discuss first read on the medical marijuana policy. Ms. Hannah.
Okay, so this is a policy that we, under state law, are required to have. So we have written this up, just discusses the administration and use of medicinal marijuana. Students have to have a prescription for this. It talks about where and when the prescription would be administered, where it is kept. Any questions, comments?
Sean, do you want to chime in on this?
Yeah.
Because I know that this could be a contentious point with many stakeholders. But Hannah did indicate that this is a state law.
Mhm.
And we want to make sure that in the event that there is a need met or need for one of our students, that we're providing it to them. So go, please.
Absolutely. Happy to shed some light on that. So the Department of Health has issued regulations requiring, along with the Rhode Island Department of Ed, requiring that school departments adopt a medical marijuana policy that governs how medical marijuana is administered to students who have a prescription for medical marijuana. And this policy, pretty short and sweet, just governs the general supportive and compliance efforts under the law as it relates to that. I will note that it does allow for school nurses to refuse to administer medical marijuana, so long as they're not picking and choosing which kids they refuse to administer medical marijuana to, and being arbitrary. So it's like you're either all in or you're all out. And it would be up to the school department to make arrangements so the student does receive that medical marijuana, that medicine. So ultimately, this is being governed by the state, and school districts are adopting these policies fairly uniformly throughout the state at this point in time. And it's, I think for the most part, the number of students throughout the state that require or have a prescription for medical marijuana is relatively low.
I think it was under 10
It was, I
as of
thought it was 12.
December or something. Yeah, it was barely. in the
Very
double-
small number.
Very,
Because that was my first concern. I'm like, how are
not many prescriptions.
correct. And I think what people don't realize is you read this and you immediately think that there's going to be like
No.
smoking of marijuana in schools, and that's just not the case.
And I've looked into that because we have had questions in other
Mhm.
communities
Mhm.
regarding how is this administered? And, I always make a joke, and maybe I shouldn't joke about it, but I think the impression is that there's going to be smoke billowing out of the nurse's office once this policy is adopted. And that's not the case. One, it's not administered via, inhalation as we commonly refer to marijuana or conceive of marijuana being consumed in that manner. It's consumed either in pill form or a droplet in the mouth. And it's administered in accordance with a doctor's note prescription for that. So all those medical, just like we were administering any other type of medicine to a student, those requirements that we need to follow to make sure it's administered correctly, that all is applied just the same as here. It's really no different than any other type of medicine. But there is controversy because it states are opening up the use of this beyond just for medical purposes. But of course here, that's still prohibited. No one's allowed to engage in any sort of recreational medical marijuana use while on school grounds. But this is for medical marijuana only.
So I guess,
Go ahead, Michael. Questions, concerns,
Yeah, so,
comments, please.
your policy shows, I guess I got a couple of questions.
Mhm.
Under 4.24.2, controlled substances, under the RIDOH. It refers to a student may deliver his or her own medication to school in accordance with protocols and procedures developed by the school, but may not self-administer the controlled substance while on school property. So typically, kids are, for the most part, I would imagine, riding the bus and they're on that. So that basically they're going to be able to be in possession of this medical marijuana. And I would refer back to number 2 under your policies where it says states are not required to enforce federal law or prosecute people for engaging in activities prohibited by federal law. Well, the first part of that, states are not required to enforce federal law. That is not completely accurate because if per the DOT, they absolutely enforce federal law as well as state law. Because, and our kids are right, or not, I shouldn't say our kids, the students are riding on buses that fall under that federal guideline. So was that taken into consideration? Because this is not approved by the feds. The feds do not recognize this. So to say that the states don't enforce that, they do enforce it. Because I've been stopped by the state police and straight out, they enforce federal laws as well as state laws. So that's not completely 100% accurate as far as that statement is concerned.
So I think, could we alleviate that then with the procedure then being parents must drop off the prescription to the school, like that be the procedure for drop off as opposed to the student handling it themselves?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
what's the policy
what
for
point
adults
is
right now?
that?
I was gonna say, if you have an Adderall
Policy
prescription.
now, where do you see that? Where did that, where is that? Can you just point that out to me where it is? I'm sorry, I just.
4.24.2, controlled substances.
Okay, hold on, sorry, because I don't think that kids can travel with any medication on the bus, so this would,
Right there.
I'm at a loss.
Are you looking at our policy?
I don't.
Looking at both, I have both of.
Well, if you're referencing something that's not in our policy, we can't see it.
This doesn't look like the policy, Mike.
I know it's not the policy. This is one of the protocols that got put out. You want to talk about regulations from the Department of Health that you're referencing in here.
Mhm.
This is one of their regulations.
Yeah,
Let me, hold on a minute. I thought we were,
this would need to be
can I see?
brought in by a parent to the nurse directly.
This
Just
policy
what
actually
you're saying.
prohibits a student from
Yeah,
handling.
yeah. I was gonna say. where
If
did
you
we
said,
over-
if
where
you
did I
said
see
4.24 dot something at the end, we have legal references, it's
Not the draft.
4.23.
It's not the draft from the law firm.
All right, I mean, I'll certainly take a look on that to
Right.
see what that's about, but
I'll send it to you. I'll
Oh,
send
send it to me.
I'll
That's
send the
even-
website to
that's
you.
even
I'll send
better.
it right to you. So I read that.
But again, so just to be clear, this policy does
To
not,
prohibit it.
this does not speak to or allow students to carry
Touch it.
medical marijuana on them while on the school bus.
Mm-mm.
And as it relates to
Regulations it does, so, right, so what are we going by? I mean, you.
No, we make our own policy,
Our
Michael.
policy
It's
though
our policy.
trumps everything and it
Yeah,
says
you want to go by the
students,
state or what
it
we want
says
to do?
students are prohibited from handling or self-administering medical marijuana on the school campus. That would also include the bus because we take control of the bus when our students are in them. So whatever our policy says is what we go by first. If the state allows students to handle it on the bus, I mean, that's because they let then schools make it more specific, and we're making it more specific and saying they cannot.
So I don't agree with the statement that our stuff trumps the state.
In certain respects, it does. When
It
we're
did
in
when we
line with
removed the
state,
masks.
when we're in line with state law, some of our policies, because state law can be general so that districts can specify it to their needs. And that's what we're doing here.
Correct.
We can't deny if a family presents us with a legitimate prescription and we deny the child access to that medication. We sue.
So Mike, I'll certainly take a look at what you're citing, but I can tell you that the regulations that I have looked at in this policy, which conforms with the policy as suggested by the Department of Health and the Rhode Island Department of Ed, there has been no discussion about allowing students
None.
to carry the medical marijuana on their person while on the bus. So I understand that language points to it, and I'll look to see where that's coming from, but I'm just saying that this was developed, that's not something that would be happening under this policy.
Well, that's fine. I mean, I'm not.
And I can look into a
It's
conflict.
prohibited under this policy. And it's pretty explicit.
I guess,
I mean, this is only a first read, so we
No,
can look into that and clarify.
Absolutely.
I know, and I wish this was put out to us on Friday so we could look at this a little bit more in depth.
It's just the first read.
I
There's no vote.
understand that, but for us to give our feedback to the policy committee, so in between meetings, it would be nice to be able to.
Was it uploaded when you sent out the meeting
Yeah,
notes and agenda a couple days ago?
I saw it when
Yeah,
it went
so
out
it's
on
been there
Monday.
for a couple days.
Yeah, it was out
Couple
on
of
Monday.
days, that's Monday. This is supposed to go out on Friday.
No, technically, according to Open Meetings
48
Act, it's
hours.
only 48 hours. So we were in compliance. We gave 48 hours notice. Please do not say that we're not being transparent when we are being very transparent.
We have a policy, a school committee policy where the information will be provided to us, to the school committee members on Friday.
You have authorization at any time when you are logged in to Board Docs to view draft policies as a school committee member. So you are provided with accurate information at all times. And if you would like to see information, you could ask me, you could ask Megan, you could ask Travis, you could ask Lori, you could ask Jennifer, you could ask Carolyn.
Sometimes we can't post, if I may, Chair. Sometimes we can't post until Monday because we are waiting for information from stakeholders who are involved in any of the agenda items.
And this is just the first read. So again,
Yes.
nothing needs to
30
happen
more
right
days.
now.
And I can see a few things that I'd like.
Yeah, right.
Too.
So we're open to comments.
That's what this is. I mean, it's comments, and I just like to have more time to read over something.
And I just don't want any accusations going out that we're not being transparent or not providing anybody the information. And that's the only comment I'm making on that, Mike, is just that the info was there. So Sean, if you could please in the next month, look at that language in there that Mike referenced, and also with the hazing policy, the private property language, and we can discuss in May.
And then Sean,
If there are any follow-up questions, feel free to email me directly or email the superintendent directly on, if you want to have an independent conversation about this. Can't do it with all of you, of course, OMA, but one-on-one, I'm happy to talk to anybody or at least receive questions so I can provide clarification at the next meeting.
Me too. I sit on the policy committee and oftentimes each of us take turns bringing these exemplars, model policies. Don't reinvent the wheel. We find a good model policy out there. And this one was written by one of the best law firms in the state for many school districts. And then we sort of localize it. But I do see things in here that I'd like to shift at the next policy meeting too. So
Good.
good points all.
Sue, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I'm excited to read and study.
Okay, Meg, you good?
Thank you.
Hannah?
Mhm.
Beautiful. All right, moving right along. I will consider a motion to discuss, vote, and approve the superintendent's salary for 2023, 2024.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Go ahead, John.
In terms of the salary, you can have the discussion without having a motion, because I'm assuming you're going to come to some type of number.
Oh, yes. So we have to make a
The
motion
number
with the
would be-
number in it.
I need to, the motion would need to include the number.
Okay.
Okay. I move to discuss, vote and approve raising the superintendent salary 2% for 2023, 2024 year.
Do I have a second?
second,
Do I have any discussion? Go ahead.
I would just like to say thank you, Lori, for your
Yes.
dedication to the district. And I believe you're an asset to our community. And so I thank you for that. And I look forward to working with you continuously.
It is an honor to serve the town of Little Compton School Department.
Thank you, Superintendent. We will, I did have a second. We will vote by roll call.
Travis Lottie,
Aye.
Hannah Ant,
Aye.
Megan Gonzalez,
aye.
Susan Kinane,
Aye.
Mike Rocha.
No.
Motion carries. Item 10-4. Consider, discuss, vote to approve participating in the possibility of contributing $15,000 from the capital reserve funds to the Newport Renewables.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, you're right. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So,
We go right ahead, please.
okay. So John McNamee was supposed to be here, but he couldn't make it. He was called away. And so I do have his proxy, Dr. Jim Locke. He is an 8-year resident of Little Compton. Have you lived here for 8 years? 20. Oh, oh, you've been retired for 8 years. Retired a pediatric cardiologist and surgeon, and also was on the faculty at Harvard University Medical School. And I've had the pleasure, the distinct honor of meeting with Dr. Locke and Mr. McNamee a few times in the past 6-7 months or so, I believe. And he will be distributing some information. John McNamee did ask me to remind you that he gave you a lot of information already at the past few school committee meetings. And so that's all sort of coalescing into what is going to happen next month at financial town meeting, hopefully, fingers crossed. And Dr. Locke can discuss this further.
Dr. Locke, thank you for making the time.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'll try not to be too verbose. I did bring some handouts.
Thank you.
There's only 2 sheets.
Thank you.
We started this in August, as soon as we found out that the federal grant of 30% was going to be approved for towns, and not just as a tax credit. Thank God I brought enough copies.
I think I have it. on my computer,
Oh,
so-
no, you don't.
Okay, oh, that's the new one? Okay, thank you.
That's okay. So we.
That's fine.
Good. We put together a petition in August. We had 65 citizens sign it relatively quickly to have the town move forward in this regard. We put together a request for proposals. In October, it was approved by the town council unanimously. We got 3 proposals from 3 different companies. The committee that the town council set up specifically and unanimously approved Newport Renewables and that was also voted on by the town council. This has turned into a bit of a journey, however, because at this just before the grant was approved for the town, for towns to get the subsidy, the town signed a contract to buy power from a private company up in Warren at a reduced rate at about 35% of the current rate. Now, that contract reduces the degrees of freedom that the town has. Nonetheless, if you make the assumption, which I think is a good assumption for this town, that the town is not going to put an enormous solar array on fields, but they're going to restrict their solar panels to town roofs. It turns out by some long distance, the best financial forming activity for the town is to put it on the school roof. Turns out that the school roof is ideal for solar panels. And what I've done on the first page is I've listed, first of all, how much the town currently spends for power. The town spends $109,000 a year for power, for electricity, and it uses 540 megawatt hours. If we don't put any solar on the town roof anywhere next year, instead of paying $109,000, we'll pay $91,000. And that's because the power that's coming from the company up in Warren, instead of being 21 cents a kilowatt hour, it's 15 cents. But if you put solar on the roof, it turns out after the capital cost is done, the cost of solar is roughly 1 cent, maybe 2 cents, depending on the maintenance contract. If you don't put solar on the school roof and you only put it on the safety complex, that'll drop the total annual cost of electricity to $82,000, but you will have to spend $89,000 in capital to save that $9,000. Now, a 10% return on investment is a very good return on investment, but it pales to the return on investment if you put it on the school for several reasons. First of all, there's a scope and scale associated with putting solar on the roof. Per panel, it's much cheaper, and the school has outstanding exposure to the sun. And second of all, it turns out, as you guys have already heard about, the housing payment from the state will drop the amount of money that eventually the town has to pay if it's put on the school by $100,000. So although the initial capital cost for putting it on the school is $513,000, at the end of the day, it'll only be $170,000. And these, by the way, are not my numbers. These are John's numbers, which is why I think he's been so enthusiastic about this. Having said that, I presented this at the last town council meeting, and the town council approved Newport Renewables to move forward. And we asked, and then Newport called the town administrator, Tony, to set up a telephone call to try and get the process going. Because there's a deadline here, it turns out. We may not be able to get $75,000 rebate from the Renewable Energy Fund in Rhode Island unless we get this done by July. So in order to get it done by July, there's a number of things that need to happen.
Yeah.
There needs to be an engineering analysis. There needs to be an engineering plan. Town can't do that. The town can only do that with the company. The company is now in a position that they're willing and able to move forward, to provide an engineering analysis about the suitability of the roofs, which they're very optimistic about, but they need to finalize. And also they need an engineering plan so that John can apply for the housing stipend. Both of those things probably need to be done. They probably should be done in advance of the financial town meeting in May so that the citizens of the town know exactly what it is that they're voting on.
Yes.
And in order to get that done, we need to get into an agreement with Newport Renewables, the company. In order for that to happen, the town administrator, Tony, told me that he was looking for two things. First of all, he wanted official agreement by the school committee that you would be in favor of putting solar on the roof. That doesn't mean you pay for it. It's going to the school, it's going to the town financial meeting for the town to pay for it. But the school has to give the permission to put it on the roof. Okay. The second thing is that Newport Renewables, in order to move forward, needs a $15,000 deposit against the final cost. And I have given my exposure to everything going on around, I have some concern that it might not be as easy to get from the town council. And so John told me that he thought that the school committee would be prepared to advance the $15,000 to get this process moving so that we could get the engineering and the roof analyses done, and then manage to be able to put a legitimate, reasonable proposal in front of the town.
Kind of all the town members.
That's right. So that's the story. On the second page, it gets a little more complicated. The second page describes the issues involved in maximizing. The ideal solution for this town is to maximize the solar on the roof. Since we've contracted to buy a certain amount of energy from Warren, the school has room for more energy than what's left over. There are several different ways that we can handle that as a town. Probably the best way we can do it is we could give the energy at the reduced cost that the town would be paying to the library,
Yes.
to the community center, because they're now paying full freight. They're paying 21 cents an hour. If the town assigns those energy credits to the other nonprofits in town, it's a win for everybody.
Yes.
They get a 35% reduction. The town gets to put more solar on the roof and substantially reduce the total bill. In order for that to happen, I think we need help from the new town solicitor. So tomorrow, with a positive outcome from this meeting, I will be asking the town to ask the town solicitor to help Newport Renewables and the rest of us who've been working on this to figure out how to maximize solar on the roof. I'll answer any questions that you guys might have.
First, thank you for your time. Secondly, does anyone have any questions? Go ahead, Michael.
So it seems like, from what I understand, that you've been working on this for a while.
9 months.
And there was, at one point, I had heard that there was stipulation about having solar panels on the, I think it was, within 200 feet of the commons area itself. There was a stipulation about having having any solar panels, and has that been addressed?
The answer to that is yes. I think it's more than 200 feet, because whatever the radius is, it's from Pikes Peak.
Okay.
But the school, it actually turns out that the police station just barely falls within that range also. So what's the committee? The committee that is charged with approving or not approving solar on the roof has been instructed by the town to decide whether or not it's reasonable to put solar on the roof of the school.
Let's go back.
I don't know the answer. I have not heard what that is. I have heard, however, that there's a bit of resistance in town to putting solar on the roof of the newly renovated town hall, which is another place that we could put it. But given the contract in Warren, it doesn't help us.
Correct.
It doesn't. So the answer is yes, that needs to be approved by, it's not the zoning committee, it's somebody else. And the chairman of the committee told me he was getting that done. Me and Tony said he was going to get that done, but I haven't heard the answer to that. So you're right, that needs to be addressed.
So if that needs to be addressed and that comes back and there's a hiccup with that, and we put out 15,000, what happens at that point?
The answer is, I don't know. Okay, somebody might lose $15,000. if it doesn't get approved. But this is a little bit, you can see where everybody is waiting for everybody else to make a decision. And given that dynamic, there's no question that this whole process can be stopped. So if the school committee wishes to make a vote to approve this contingent on approval of the committee that reviews solar within 200 yards of Pikes Peak, if you want to make that a contingency, I guess that's a reasonable thing to do.
Go ahead, Anna.
So my question kind of going along with that is the language here that we'd be voting on is to approve participating in and possibly contributing. So does that mean if we vote to approve this, we're not necessarily on the hook for this 15,000? Could the town still be putting that 15,000 forward?
According to Dr. Jim, you said it's a possibility that the town.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If the town, by the way, if the town approves the $513,000 capital cost at the town financial meeting in May, then that money comes back to this, I think,
Okay.
comes back to, that's up to the town.
Okay.
Savings of $343,000 to the town. So these numbers that you gave us, Dr. Locke, I have fiscal year total annual electricity 109. If you do the solar initiative, it brings us down to 43,200 for an annual savings of $65,800. Will we be able to bring it lower than the 43? Will we ever get to net?
The answer is probably yes. Okay, the answer is probably yes. Newport Renew, there are two ways in which that can occur. If in fact the town can place all of the credits from the company in Warren outside of to other
Nonprofits.
then you'll notice that the 32 megawatt hours under 2324 for $6,800, that disappears. And the school could probably put more than, they may very well be able to put more than that on the roof. But it's unlikely, it is unlikely that the town will, now, if the town is able to assign more credits outside agencies than the 60 to 80 on the sheet, the town just saves that money. That's just free money. And there are a variety of ways in which that can occur. The town could in fact negotiate with the company in Warren to drop their requirement for the amount of energy that they bought from 7.8% to 6%, and they'd save another $10,000. I think these numbers are, I'd like to think that these numbers are slightly conservative, but they're not terribly conservative.
Okay.
So I don't think there's an enormous amount more money to save here than I've listed.
Understood. I mean, right now, it's, if you do it over, if you amortize just the savings, assuming that there's no more beyond the 43,000 on a 10-year period, it's a $650,000 savings collectively for the town, conservatively.
This is the best investment that this town will ever make. I don't have any question about that. Nothing comes close to this.
$15,000, the juice is definitely worth the squeeze. It's
And
the,
this is 40, this is a savings. The real savings is from 43 to 91.
correct.
Okay, so that's $47,000 a year for 25 years. And it's more than that if the price of electricity goes up.
Which I bet it does.
There's a lot of people betting that it's going to go up a lot.
Bet it does. Do we have any other questions for Dr. Locke?
So I'm asking for two things. I'm asking for the school committee to approve putting solar on the roof, and for the school committee to be willing to invest up to $15,000 in order to get this process moving if the town doesn't do it tomorrow.
Travis, 1 second. So one question as far as the solar on the roof from the perspective of the street. Wait, do you know where it would actually be located? I know they have to do.
The only place you would see it is on the south facing roof of the gym. The rest of the school,
Side.
and the south facing roof of the gym is very dark colored. So the panels will mostly disappear on the south facing roof. There won't be, the rest of the roof is flat, it's over this building and can't be seen.
I mean, I think it's, I don't like the idea of putting 15,000 out without being indefinite. But at the other side is that we want to make sure that, because whether it's the school or whether it's the other town buildings, it affects us all, you know what I mean?
That's correct.
And I understand that, but I don't want to be taking 15,000 and throwing it out the window, but I mean, at the same time, this is beyond the school, is my feeling. I want to make sure that more people get helped in the school.
Yes.
This is way better for the rest of the town. And by the way, if this passes, and if we put solar on the roof, the next place that solar is going to go is on the roof of the new town garage.
Right.
And the new town garage is going to have room at the dump for an enormous amount of solar.
Yes.
And once the school, so when the town hall gets done, they're going to put heat pumps in.
Yes.
And if any other buildings in town puts in heat pumps or air conditioners at any time in the near future, becomes an enormously increased savings.
Correct.
How is this being presented at the financial town meeting as a $540,000 line item?
I believe it's I believe the request is 513. Okay, that's the capital number. That's the upfront capital cost from Newport Renewables.
Prior to reimbursements.
Prior to any, because nobody's going to get their money back until it's put in.
Correct.
So basically, the town is going to be loaning the federal government, the state government, and the Department of Education $400,000 until it's put in, and then they'll get paid back.
Is there any indication of how long that process will be?
Yes, that's a good question. Newport Renewables, one of the reasons that they picked Newport Renewables is that they would get it done in less than a year. If it gets approved at the May town, my hope, obviously, is that if it gets approved at the town financial meeting, they'll do it in the summer when school's out.
Yes.
It's one of the reasons why I'm working pretty hard not to let the time slip away.
Yes.
Because that would be the ideal solution to get it done in August and July and September.
Correct.
Before school gets back in. And then the other problem, which I'm sure you guys are aware of, this is all of this is new to me. None of this has anything to do with children with heart disease. Okay? What I've learned is that I'm not sure all of these rebates and incentives are going to be here 2 years from now. I'm not sure they're going to be here. There is an opportunity cost for delay, which is not small.
Correct. Rarely we have, to speak to Michael's point, oftentimes the policy that we implement really only affects the people that come within our four walls, the stakeholders that are impacted. And sometimes there's stakeholders in town that aren't impacted. And what value can the school bring to me as somebody that doesn't have a child? And here you highlight something that could really change the future and the opportunities that are presented to not only the community, but then our nonprofit buildings in town A community such as ours that is small could even make considerations for, I would say, churches are nonprofit as well, that
Absolutely. I wasn't going to go there.
That is,
I would.
Other people have.
We don't have a lot of buildings, so it's like, well, can we power the entire commons?
There's no, every nonprofit in the state of Rhode Island is theoretically
eligible.
eligible to be part of the virtual net metering system.
Correct. And I can't think of a better vessel to bring everyone in the community together, to lift everyone up and say, look at what benefit this has given my organization, whatever it may be.
I wouldn't do this if it wasn't such an outstanding opportunity,
Really appreciate your time in this and your
but
diligence.
I'm being paid well.
I was gonna say, it's volunteer. You know, that's- yeah.
I'm being paid about the same as the rest of you
Yeah, I
guys.
was gonna say. We have, go ahead. Any other questions,
No questions.
concerns?
No.
I mean, I'm excited. Go ahead, miss.
I have one, I know nothing about this, but is there any studies or anything that have been done to show that it would be a detriment in any way, shape, or form to have all that, those batteries and those solar, children exposed to that on a daily? Is there any,
We're not putting in any batteries. Okay, the battery, the solar, that's a good question. There are a lot of people who think we should put in batteries, and I'm not saying that that's out of the question. The solar panels are just, they're the same as putting black paint on your roof. Okay, that's the same kind of thing. There's no evidence that the solar panels themselves create any problem. The batteries can be, as some of you may have noticed recently, can be a fire hazard.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So we've decided not to, talking with the fire chief, we've decided not to put batteries into this for that reason. But other than that, the solar panels, there's a separate advantage to the solar panels, which I didn't realize. It turns out that if you don't know this, you should know, we have the most expensive electricity in the state and close to the most expensive electricity in the country. And one of the reasons for that is that the power line from Fall River down to here is maxed out. And they're charging us extra for the transmission of power from Fall River and Tiverton down into Little Compton. If you put solar, if we generate our own electricity locally, we don't have to worry about that.
and my other question was, do these panels or whatever is gonna be on the roof, does it have a shelf life, like at the end of 20 years? Like, what do we do with them, or do they belong to us, or does somebody take them away, or?
That's a great question. Okay. And I actually, because I heard that people were concerned about what was going to happen to the windmills out in the ocean after 25 years. So I looked it up. It turns out that they're guaranteeing that the solar panel, the average solar panel lifespan is 30 years. They're guaranteeing them for 25 years. At the end of 25 years, probably costs $25 per panel to recycle them. So they'll be putting 250 panels on this roof. You know, that's $600.
Yep.
And then you have to
6,000.
replace them.
6,000. Pardon?
And then you have to replace them.
And then you have to replace them.
And that's a cost also.
That's right. But then it's the exact same set of financial considerations that we're talking about now.
500,000 again, or?
With whatever, or you could not replace them and pay 21 cents a kilowatt hour. You could just pay the regular rate and not replace them.
So basically what you're proposing is that this is a purchase system. It's not a lease system.
That's correct.
So where does the maintenance of this come involved? Are you looking back to the school for maintenance of this, the cost of the maintenance of this?
No, the maintenance for this would be part of the contract. And I have that listed here somewhere. Yeah, probably only $2,000 to $3,000 a year is what the company will charge to maintain the system.
And that's going to be paid through who, please? Who knows?
Well, if I may be so naughty, The real question is who gets the $48,000 savings?
Who gets the bonus? Yeah.
It's always the fine print. I always like to know about the fine print.
Okay, so I have not gone into the politics of where the difference between $91,000 and $43,000 goes. Okay, I'm not into deciding whether that goes to tax cut or to the next round of solar or to putting, by the way, electric vehicle charging stations in your new parking lot.
Correct.
And they're only $5,000 each.
Correct. And will probably qualify for state aid.
And would qualify for state aid.
I'm wondering if it's more than 50%.
I've had solar panels on my barn for more than 3 years. It's just run like a clock with a battery in it. They're also warranted. Now, I didn't have the same installer that you do, but there are warranties that come with these as well. So I'm not sure particularly what are the details of the warranty, but I'm not worried at all. These solar panels been around and used in quantity for at least 10 years.
Correct.
We've had ours have been up for 15.
We're only getting more efficient and the cost is only coming down more and more. So.
And the disposal is not the same as the wind tunnels or the wind turbines. It's pretty straightforward. You can recycle it for a reasonable cost.
Let's not impugn the wind turbines.
I'm not. I'm not even imputing anybody.
Conversation for a different day.
But I heard that at length at the last town council.
Any other questions? Oh, yes, for the folks that spoke, we do need your name and address for the record, do we not, Jonathan?
Yeah, we
do.
153 Quicksand Pond Road.
153 Quicksand Pond.
173 John Dyer Road.
173 Tom.
John.
Well, with full name?
Oh, my name is Tom Clemo.
What was your last name again, Tom?
Nancy Jordan, 4 Madden Lane.
Nancy.
Cindy Sharps and 5 Peanuts Lane.
What was that again?
Cindy Sharps, 5 Peanuts Lane.
Thank you.
All right, I will consider
I think we've got the motion and everything.
oh yeah, perfect. We were at discussion.
We'll vote by roll call.
There was
some discussion about contingencies. Did you want
Right.
to include those contingencies?
Michael, do we want to include that contingency? What's the timeline on? So I feel the same way Michael does. I really don't, while I think that this is a layup and everybody would agree, I don't know if everyone will agree. And I do not want to take much needed dollars from our coffer. So when would the decision in terms of the setbacks? So if we put a contingent $15,000 upon this governing body with the
Allowing solars within 200 yards of.
correct,
I think that's reasonable.
I do.
They don't
I do
do it.
too. I
If
mean,
they don't do it, this project doesn't move forward.
yeah.
So that's, yeah.
All right.
That
Then
makes me
should we
comfortable.
include that piece of it?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Within 200 yards of.
I can't remember.
100 yards or feet, because that's a huge
Yeah, that is
Exactly.
swath.
It's a long way.
I think it's that we get and
Continue.
it's contingent upon an approval to.
Town's approval.
Town's approval to
Town's-
implement the array.
So the school is giving its approval to put solar on the roof. And they'll put up up to 15,000 contingents on the town's approval.
But I would say that when we say the town's approval, you want to specify we're
The
not.
committee.
Yeah, the committee,
We're
not.
not talking about the money.
Special town meeting.
Okay.
What committee is it? Is it the planning board?
Relevant town
The
approval.
town.
The Pikes Peak guys.
All relevant town approvals.
Yeah.
I
So
can't remember the name of the committee.
So the motion would read approve putting solar on the school roof and invest 15,000 as a deposit from capital reserve funds to Newport Renewables contingent on all relevant town approvals.
That's too broad,
Yeah.
because that could be interpreted that the town is approving the money.
Aren't you just worried about Pikes Peak
Yeah, shouldn't we
and
say,
that space?
Worried about,
should we say setback approvals?
Sure. Amend
yeah,
that.
that would be more reasonable.
Amend that to setback approvals.
Because
I just need, we need.
So moved.
Make-
Second.
I'll read it.
No, she did it.
Oh, okay. You did it
So
already.
moved.
So
Second.
moved.
Beautiful. We will vote by roll call.
Travis Audi,
Aye.
Hannah Ayat,
Aye.
Megan Gonzalez.
Aye.
Susan Kinane.
Aye.
Mike Rocha.
All right.
Excellent. The motion passes.
You guys are all stars.
Dr. Locke, good luck. You have our support,
Thank you
unanimous
so
support.
much.
We hope that this project can not only be a benefit to the school, but the entire community. What a beautiful thing. What a beautiful thing.
The plan.
And the plan. I mean, don't forget about
I
that.
started with this because of my grandkids and the planet.
Yeah.
I love to
Thank
hear
you
that.
for all your hard
So
work.
much.
Yes, thank you.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a consider?
Oh,
Yep, go.
oh, please send an official vote to Tony Texera
Okay.
in time for tomorrow's town council.
Then we'll work on it.
Okay.
All right? Make sure he actually gets it in writing.
We'll handle it.
I'm looking
I'm
at.
very, how best to put.
Jennifer, Lori, thank you.
More-
Consider it done.
Thank you, Dr. Locke.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Consider, discuss, vote to approve any request information or administration from legal counsel or legal counsel.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Michael.
So recently, as Laurie indicated, that they chose a plan for the parking lot out back. How come we weren't, why weren't we involved in that and any feedback from this committee as far as the layout and what was going to happen on that parking lot?
It's the town's project and was never really our project. And so even before the decision was made for us to collaborate, they hired an engineering firm, civil engineering firm in town to come up with, I think, 3 different plans. And they were pretty close to our capital improvement discussions about the possible town parking lot and entrance and egress and all that. And we actually used the diagrams from the capital improvement plan that all of you voted on. And
If I can add to, I think a big part of that discussion and decision the town council was working towards relied on what they wanted to do with the maintenance barn, that building between us and the Grange, which is solely their decision to make. So I think that was the big question in flux.
He's been facilitating all the county
On the case?
happening here. So the school has been facilitating all of this.
I have a lot of wires that go into that.
And I have been, attending some, popping in because I've had special ed meetings at night. But so we couldn't ask the town as the school, to knock down the maintenance barn. They did ask us to weigh in. And so the engineering firm came here. Bob Mushin was there, Tony Texera, I was there, John McNamee was there, Jonathan was there, because we had discussed with the capital improvement plan, if you remember, electronically, installing gates that we could control for safety issues. And so the 3 plans, only one of them included knocking down the maintenance barn. And that's not a decision that the school could make. The town council voted last week to knock it down. And, Jack was at the meeting too, to knock it down. And so it's basically what we sussed out with our architectural engineering firm for our 5-year plan. And it sort of synced up with one of the plans from the civil engineering company in town. I forgot the gentleman's name.
Bill.
Bill Smith.
Bill Smith.
Legend.
There was another,
Civil
was a
engineering.
different name, different first name, very nice young fella.
P, last name with a P. Principal.
What is his name?
But we got-
Dean's, is it?
I know you.
I didn't know any of them. So we were so happy when the town council voted for the plan that knocked down the maintenance barn because it would be the safest for our kids, our families going in and out.
So that's my concern, is that there was some confusion on what was actually the flow of traffic was gonna be, because I was watching the meeting and I'm like, why didn't we have any input, any feedback on this? So I'm still not clear on how the flow of traffic's gonna work. And again, if it's coming back, that's why I was asking before, as far as this housing money, if we're signing off, if we have to sign off on that, don't you think we should have had a say in something and just like, hey, guys, we're thinking about doing this?
We were not thinking, it is the town's project and we are collaborating because it abuts our property. And no doubt our parents will be using it. It is not going to be a staging area for our buses. That's absolutely separate. And so less than half the days of the calendar year, our parents will be using it after, to pick up kids, or only the kids who aren't taking the buses. And, the other days, it will be solely used by town citizens and visitors. So it really was it is their project that we are collaborating on and bringing it to fruition.
So I guess one of the concerns was that they were showing on the plans about vehicles going by between the tennis courts and the school. And as far as vehicles traveling through
I
that.
think that is one of the options.
That was
we
one
had
of them.
discussed. I think
Are we away from?
Well, in terms of a request, no, it's okay. In terms of a request for information.
Get that to you.
I'm fine with my asking the
Absolutely.
questions and providing some straightforward information. If this is going to turn into a back and forth,
Right.
and more full-length discussion with the other members.
I agree.
There needs to be an agenda item or put in your Friday memo.
Okay. I'll put in the Friday memo, may not be this memo. So we had Good Friday off. Staff had that off. I did not. And vacation, no, I'm not going to ask them for any content. We don't have a lot from the town yet. They still haven't given us, care and control legally. But they did come here on site and we did bring up our beautiful schematics from our architect, Studio Jade, and good news is they agreed with our plan, our optimal plan in that huge capital improvement plan. There was resistance to tearing down the barn. I'm not saying that it was a strong case, but there was some resistance, and that is why two plans did include it still. There was also a plan that, sort of went by the community center and co-opted some of those parking spaces. So the firm did a great job of offering 3 different routing schematics, but everyone, I think there was consensus at the table, and we were hoping there would be consensus at the table here, in school. And there was, I guess, consensus. Was there unanimity in terms of the plan that was approved by town council?
I wasn't at the town council.
I read that one.
No, it's their barn to tear down, not ours. And they will be building a new one, a garage at the
Oh, don't.
town dump.
So once more info comes to light, could maybe that be a spotlight or something, just what that plan is going to be and how it's going to affect?
Could have the architect,
Yeah.
the engineers coming in. But if you say the engineer's name out, he owns the company. Oh, gosh.
Bill Smith was here.
Bill Smith was here. There were 3.
Okay. Dean was
Dean,
he was the building.
An official.
that's him, Dean. What's his last name?
Simmons.
He somehow had a lot to do with the plans.
Lori, thank you. I will consider a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.